So here's a question for you. Do Muslims and Christians and Jews worship the same God? Something to really think about. Certainly we each have different ideas in this Abrahamic tradition as different Abrahamic branches of who God is and what he represents. Christ definitely is a difference maker from Judaism and Islam, where we believe that Christ was divine and is the Savior of the world. But there are other characteristics and other differences in the way that each of us worship and the things that we worship about. But there are also a lot of similarities. A few years ago, something happened that made me really think about this. There was a female professor at Wheaton College. Now, Wheaton is a Christian university. It's been called by some the Harvard of Christian universities. And she wore a hijab, basically in solidarity with the Muslims. And along with that, claimed that Christians and Muslims worship the same God. And she was fired from Wheaton College. Of course, it's a private university, and if this doesn't go along with their religion and what the rules of the university, then that's obviously a problem, what they're trying to teach. I think a lot of us would think that way about, say, for example, BYU. And if there's too much of a teaching that's going on that's outside of what the gospel preaches, then there might be an issue there. And that's happened before. But she was fired. And the National Review wrote an article about this, but with one of their more popular columnists, David French, about what had happened here. And the title of the article was "Christians and Muslims Do Not Worship the Same God." And that really made me think, okay, well, I guess we don't, but kind of we do. Do they believe in the Creator? Do they believe in a higher power? Do they believe in being responsible to this God? A couple things that I might bring up about this quickly. First of all, as a Mormon, as a Latter-day Saint, I've been told by other Christians that I don't worship the same God. Even though I say I worship Jesus Christ, and I believe that he is the Savior of the world and that he resurrected on the third day, and that he is divine, I'm told still, even then, that I don't worship the same God. So even as you narrow it down within Christian traditions between a creedal Christian and a Latter-day Saint, you could still have, especially coming from the creedal Christian side, them saying that the Latter-day Saints do not worship the same God that they do. Now, I've seen that written many times as well. But a couple things to consider on this. I've gone back and looked at this and researched this a little bit. And if you just peek behind the blinders a little bit into other religious worship, you'd see that the Muslim deity is Allah. And that is an Arabic term for God. And if you translate the term Allah directly from Arabic, it means the God. Also, Christians and Jews who were Arabs or lived in Arabia or spoke Arabic in pre-Muslim times called their God Allah. And so they were using the Arabic term for God. These are Jews and Christians, and they called him Allah. And they still do today. So if you have Christians and Jewish Arabs that speak Arabic, they still call God Allah. They have the same root, that Allah has the same root to the word as El for Elohim that we use. The Canaanites had the god El, and other Mesopotamians called their god El. The Jews called their god El, at least sometimes and especially previously. or Elohim, the gods. And so these all kind of go back to the same term. And I was reading shortly after this in Alma chapter 18. And I thought this was pretty interesting. Setting this up, this is where Ammon goes to the Lamanites. He wants to go out and preach to the Lamanites. And he's gone out, he's chopped off all the arms, taken care of King Lamoni's sheep, and headed back, and he's out in the stables taking care of the horses for him. And King Lamoni is astonished. He calls him in, and he can't speak to him for a long time. He just can't even speak because he's afraid that he is maybe the Great Spirit. But this is what he says. It's interesting. Now, this was the tradition of Lamoni, and this is in reference to asking about if he believes in God. Because remember that the Lamanites, having broken off from the Nephites, they ended up with a different religious tradition. A lot of similarities, but a different religious tradition. And here's the question. Again, did the Lamanites worship the same God as the Nephites? Here's how Alma works through this. How Ammon works through this. Now, this was the tradition of Lamoni, which he had received from his father, that there was a great spirit. King Lamoni did open his mouth and said unto him, Who art thou? Art thou this great spirit? Talking to Ammon, who knows all things. So this is a deity, another thing that we would all have in common, that's saying that he's omnipotent, that this God knows all things. And Ammon then asks, Believest thou that there is a God? And in Arabic, you would ask, Do you believe that there is an Allah? And he answered and said unto him, I do not know what that meaneth. So he's not sure exactly what you're saying. In other words, Allah, God, Jesus, we're all using different terms or names. So whatever name, maybe it's El, maybe it's Jehovah, we're not sure. We don't know the term that Ammon is using here. But Lamoni says, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. And so it follows up here and says, And then Ammon said, Believest thou that there is a great spirit? So he is taking whatever term he used for God, and now he is using Lamoni's term for God. And certainly there are different practices, there are different beliefs, there are different traditions, although there would be a lot of similarities in their festivals and their rites and their rituals, etc., you would imagine. But he asks him, Believest thou that there is a great spirit? He's using his Lamoni's term. And he said, Yea. And here's Ammon's response. And Ammon said, This is God. Or he might have said, This is Jehovah. Or this is El. Probably Jehovah. This is Jehovah. So really interesting to think about this. Do Muslims, Jews, and Christians worship the same God? At least according to the way Ammon works through this interfaith relationship. He's saying, yes, you call him something, I call him something else. But this is God, and this is who I speak of. It's an interesting point here. We'll talk to you next time.